Who's not composting their bananas? Like, at the end of the day, you guys just want to build. The goal of reducing one skip bin per site is achievable. One, two, 600. This is where I get sent for smoker. I'm not allowed to hang out with the guys. We need to be really careful about this one, I think, hey? Yeah. Right. Let's face it, our planet's not doing too well, landfills are overflowing, and construction is one of the biggest factors to play in that. I'm Josh, a builder here in New Zealand.
Subscribe to make this channel sustainable.
Erin GGGGG asks, what's my thoughts on sustainable housing? Well, Erin GGGGG, sustainable in housing is a bit of an oxymoron. There was a study completed recently by the University of Auckland that estimates that 40 to 50% of waste going to New Zealand landfills originates from a construction site. And so sustainability and construction, they feel like right now these polar opposites. So this bin represents 2 weeks of action on site. So apparently each new house that's built contributes something like 4 tonnes of waste. And I would definitely believe it. You know, on every building site, one of the first things we get sent there is a skip bin. And then the skip bin's fills up, and then what do? We get another skip bin. And before you know it, by the end of the build, we've probably got 3 or 4 skip bins. Every house we're building adds about 4 of these skip bins to the landfill. And this year, we've got 9 builds on the go. So that's 36 bins sending to the landfill just from J&K sites. And like, when you think about it like that, that's disgusting. It's a really hard problem to tackle, and the industry is really set in its mode of construction. One of the biggest problems is that all of the timber that the house is built with, from the linings, decking, the framing, all of it is treated. You know, we can't put that in the fire, and we can't put it in the ground, and we can't use it outside. So if you don't know who that is Julianne Genter. She is a Member of Parliament here in New Zealand for the Green Party. And I have been given the opportunity to show her the office and the building site. We took her to ITM, I even made some notes to talk about the issues we're facing in the building industry. Out of that 40 to 50% of waste going to the landfills, they estimated that up to 20% of it is treated timber. And the problem with treated timber is right now, there's literally nothing you can do with it. So one of the things that we do is we save as much stuff as possible. I've got a bunch of these linear oblique offcuts from jobs, and it's frustrating because they're about 1 meter long. You know, they're decent, but you can't really use them for anything. So I've come up with this idea to minimize the waste, to minimize chucking these in the bin. We're going to stack them along the bottom half of the wall here. So the bottom part of the wall will be in these weatherboards that I used on my house. And then the top half will be a birch ply sheet. So let me just start by saying I am definitely not a leader in this category. I'm just a builder grappling with how do I make my building sites a little bit more sustainable. So, you know, this is just a question that Erin GGGGG asked on my Instagram. It would be easy to ignore this question, but it's something that I feel like needs to be discussed. Because if this is where housing is and this is where sustainability is, how do we get there? Well, we have this discussion over and over and over, and before you know it, we start to close that divide. I did make a video, I'm pretty sure I made a video a while ago on this subject. Greta popped up on my newsfeed, and then I started seeing lots of memes with this guy and Greta. High five, guys. Anyway, in that video, I talk about when you think about it as being someone else's problem, you don't do anything yourself. But as a builder doing a few houses a year, if I can think about what are some of the things we can do to make our sites more sustainable, not the most sustainable, more sustainable, yeah, we can start to make a small difference. And if everyone makes a small difference, That small difference combined means we start to move along a lot. Whereas if everyone says, this is where we are, this is where we should be, the divide seems so big that no one moves from where they are. Small differences repeatedly add up to big changes.
I guess if we've got this kind of stuff, then we'll use it.
Yeah, and then it's going to create another problem. Now we're going to have to get rid of it, but we'll solve one thing which leads to another, which leads to another. Whenever we bring in something new, it's frustrating and there's lots more questions than answers. But the vibe that I'm getting from my builders and the builders that I've been interacting with is that people want a solution. I want to reiterate, we don't have the solution, but by starting to tweak our processes on site and experiment with what we can do better, we will find an answer. Here's a couple of things we're already doing on our sites where possible to reduce waste. So number one is over ordering. So not only is that wasting money, but if you end up with too much materials on site, more than likely it gets damaged, which means we can't send it back to the merchant because they can't sell it to someone else. And so what happens? It either gets stored in a lockup for the rest of eternity, or it gets chucked in the bin. And unfortunately, often when you have multiple building sites on the go and there's a big skip in there and you're faced with the decision, do I take all of this back to the lockup, which is already jammed full of crap from all those sites, or do I chuck it in this bin? More often than not, it just gets chucked in the bin. And so one of the best ways to avoid that in the first place is to not send too much stuff to site. That's way easier said than done. If you see the list of materials that you need to order for a house, and even just 20% of those over, that ends up with a lot of materials over. And conversely, on the other hand, if we don't have enough materials on site, it slows everyone down. And so there's this perfect balance. Thankfully, most people don't like wasting money, so they do keep good tabs on that. And by the time you've done a few, and by working with the same supplier, we get systems down where we're making sure we're getting the right amount of stuff to site.
What are the policies that are going to help in the long term to build up the kind of local manufacturing that we need to enable people here to be able to respond to these issues?
Yeah,
I think the government has to help in manufacturing.
Yeah.
There's probably a bigger question in sustainability about materials being used. And there was a guy that did a Grand Designs down in Christchurch, and he tried to do the entire build with absolutely no chemicals. Not only did it take years, but he actually had to change tact halfway through because he found it was virtually impossible to meet the rules to build the house to the standard he had to build it using the materials that were readily available on the market and still have zero chemicals. Unfortunately, it's the same thing. Here's the system of materials we're able to use, the rules we have to meet, and all those things. And here's the ideal, and they're so far apart, but they are getting closer. 3604 is not really, like from a council's point of view, is not really working.
No.
Like I think what you touched is like MBA who's setting the rules, and then you got the local council who's interpreting the rules, and then you got the builder who's supposed to be following the rules, and it's like this disconnect.
There's some things we could do better, right? And all we have to do is change some stuff in the code.
There's a group popped up called Declare, and it's like a nutrition label for building products. And their aim is just like we go to the supermarket and we look at the back of the thing and we're like, right, how much sugar, how much fat? And I don't know about you, but I make decisions on what I'm buying based on some of that stuff. And you look at it and you're like, whoa, I can't even pronounce those ingredients, let alone do I want to think about putting them in my body. It's starting to head that way for building. Are all the houses I build got 100% only Declare label stuff in it? Unfortunately, no. But we're starting to have those discussions with people and we're starting to move in that direction. So touching on the Declare label, we can definitely use more sustainable products. And the market and the manufacturing, it has finally started to come to the party and be more aware of this. I've just spent the morning dumpster diving. We've saved cardboard, we've saved plastic wheels, we've saved 2 buckets full of metal. We've got a whole bunch of aluminium flashings, but all of the Hardies has come back into the bin. Hardies, it's time to come to the party and give us builders an option to recycle or return your product. I'm keen to come up to Auckland and talk to you more about how we can trial that on a J&K site. Hit me up. Unfortunately, it's going to take regulation, the government, the councils, to also come to the party and start recognizing some of these alternative products as acceptable solutions. Because for us as builders and the architects and the designers to jump through some of those hoops to design a house with those products is just takes so much time. and money. You know, you got to find a sweet spot. By some figures, we're 100,000 homes short in New Zealand. And so they want us to build all these homes, but the whole system is set up to build the homes the way we're building them. And that results in waste. And so it's going to take little changes on site. Even little things like when we did the office fit out, instead of chucking the weatherboard in the bin, we found a way to reuse it. When I did my renovation at Victoria Street, I reused doors, skirtings. I remember I found a really nice glass cavity slider out of an old house in Upper Hutt that we were renovating, and they didn't want it and it was going to get chucked in the bin. And I took that back to my house and made a point of incorporating that into the design. It means you've got to have the space to store the stuff. It means you've got to have the willingness to change your idea to suit the stuff you've got. And it's not always feasible. I kept a timesheet while I was doing the reno on that house, and all up, logged over 1,000 hours of my own time working on that place. So then the third area of sustainability that you can go down is like eco housing or passive housing. And again, this is a bit of a tough one because there is definite benefits, you know, making your house so well insulated that you can warm the whole thing up with a toaster, and really designing for the sun and all those things. But what we're finding is that the cost of that is so great that it puts off a lot of clients, and so they just choose to build the traditional way. But over time, those practices will become more common and more people will choose that and value that. What I've seen is, in general, the discussion around insulation and good design and efficient heating, and more people, more and more clients that I'm dealing with are starting to talk about these things. As long as we're all having the discussions and working towards a solution, it might not be the perfect result right now, but let's keep stepping towards that ideal scenario. You don't have to have all the answers at the start. You just have to take the first step. And the first step will lead to the second step, which will lead to the third. I'm Josh, the builder here in New Zealand, and today's Smoko Chat is all about... Oh, wow.